how's it going? Just gonna be doing a little bit of eating a salad here. It's a pre-mix. You came out of a package sort of thing. Salad kit. It's like I forget what it is. It's got like croutons and ranch dressing, I think. And I got the iced tea. It's like a sugar-free there. Just gonna be talking about some of my favorite movies. And I'll go off about one TV show, I guess. But I don't know if I should spoil them, you know. I definitely spoiled movies in the past. I've done reviews on my ASMR channel here, and I don't know. So maybe I'll do a spoiler alert right now, so just in case, you know. It's actually hard for me to talk a bit about them without spoiling them. But first movie I'd like to talk about, it's called Dark Horse. So, it's a movie about a guy living in the United States. He's about 35 years old and lives with his parents and stuff like that. Or works for his dad's company. He's kind of slacking off at work and stuff like that. And he's at a wedding. He decides to approach a girl at a wedding, so I think he's kind of deciding now, you know, I'm getting older, and now is the time for me to find a girl, you know, to settle down with and stuff, and basically, so he approaches the girl who's sitting by herself at the wedding, and she is single, but she's really not interested in him at all and stuff. But he gets her number anyway. Kind of like coerces his way to getting a number. And later on, from home, you know, maybe a few days later, he calls her. She's kind of trying to hang up on him, but again, he kind of coerces his way to getting her address and stuff. Later on, he shows up at her address, at her street address, and sort of unannounced, well, yeah, because she was trying to reject him, so she was like, what are you doing here, and stuff like that. But she lets him in anyways. Sorry, like I know I've talked about this movie, and I think I did a whole video on this, ASMR video on this in the past on this channel and stuff like that. Just kind of like I'm repeating myself, sorry. But no, this guy's name's Abe, the main character. So Abe's kind of, instead of doing his work, you know, he works in an office with, you know, for his dad's company there. His dad owns some sort of real estate company, and instead of doing his work like he should, he's kind of like looking on Amazon on like different toys, expensive like toys you can buy and stuff like that. his dad comes up to him and is like, "Did you finish the spreadsheets?" And he was like, "No." And he makes this kind of excuse that the printer was down or something like that, or some bullshit. And then Abe kind of says like, to his dad, like, he's like, "Fuck you, I quit," sort of thing. Walks out of there, but then he kind of, his dad says, "Well, you can pack up and move out of the house while you're at it." So Abe's like, "Okay, whatever." But then Abe doesn't pack up. He kind of goes back to his parents' house later on that night. His dad just kind of stares him down and stuff like that. And Abe kind of like sheepishly goes back to his room and stuff. So then, in this movie, he's kind of having these hallucinations, that of these coworkers of him that he has, coming and giving him advice when it in the movie it wouldn't make sense for that coworker to be in that scene at that time and stuff like that. And, kind of like guiding him through life and giving him tough love and stuff like that. So it's sometimes I did find it a little bit hard to understand what the hallucinations was like. This hallucination was this real occurrence, but now I think looking back on it now, it's kind of plain to see there were hallucinations. But Gabe's got this he's got a pretty nasty attitude all throughout the movie and stuff like that, and things like that. He's playing backgammon with his mom, and says to his mom, "You owe me like a huge amount of money for my backgammon winnings and stuff like that." But then things kind of, that girl who doesn't like him at the beginning, and kind of changes her mind and decides that she's interested in pursuing a relationship with Gabe, and so Gabe's kind of like excited about that, and things get moving along pretty fast, and they talk about getting married and stuff like that. And Abe's got this brother who's a doctor, medical doctor, and Abe's kind of got this. He gets into a fight with his brother over the phone, because his brother says, calls him and says, "I hear things aren't going so well with you and Dad right now," and Abe kind of blames him. He says, like, brings up something that happened about 10 years ago, and apparently the older brother, instead of going camping with Gabe, he chose to go to Fire Island, which was like this, I don't know, theme park or something, or some special event that happened about 10 years ago, and he was kind of blaming his brother for that. But soon, Abe gets a call from his girlfriend there, and she says, "I just want to let you know I'm actually pretty sure it was, I could be wrong about the disease, some serious disease, maybe. I don't want to say like, I think it was hepatitis C or something. Or she's like, I do have this serious disease going on. And it's infectious and stuff like that. So just to let you know." Yeah, he's kind of like a bit startled, and but then he kind of decides to pursue the girl anyways, And that they were at this very important meeting going on at work, you know, in the morning, and Abe shows up late and stuff like that, and his dad's super pissed, and his dad says to him after the meeting, is like, you know what, I've decided to give your cousin Justin, I think his name is Justin, your job, you know, and we just can't go on like this, and stuff like that, and then Abe's like, starts basically crying, he's devastated, and he's like, you know, he rolls out of there and gets into his H2 Hummer, and he's not thinking about what he's doing, and you know, he's like, he's so upset basically that he's not watching where he's going, and he gets into a serious accident and ends up in the hospital, and so I think he had a coma, and but then he kind of wakes up in the hospital, and his family's there, and basically his dad's like, you know, you can have your old job back, it's no problem, and you can work there as long as you want and stuff like that. But he's like, Abe soon finds out that his girlfriend's there, and she's pregnant, and he says to her like something like, you know, if you're pregnant, you know, and with my kid, and I know that everything's gonna be okay and stuff like that. And then she says something like, don't worry, I'm not. Kind of walks out there, and you know, a little while later, you know, he turns basically yellow because of his disease. So his girlfriend gave him this disease, and then I also found out from his girlfriend, I got to mention that she's has been cured of the disease, so she doesn't have it anymore. And then you know, he gets the disease, and then basically he ends up dying from the disease. And then it shows him at his funeral, and at Abe's funeral, and then his girlfriend has a newborn baby, and she's standing next to his brother. So it's she had a baby with his brother. Actually, she was pregnant with his brother's. While he was in the coma, she was having sex with his brother and stuff. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's and then did I mention that? I mentioned the title, right? It's called Dark Horse, and it shows Abe, like it's kind of a hallucination thing, but it shows him, you know, like how when you're a kid, sometimes on the wall, you know, your parents have you stand up next to the wall, and they'll put with a pencil, they'll put a line where your top of your head is, and that's, you know, right how tall you are, measuring, that's how tall you are right on the wall, and stuff like that at this age, and stuff like that. And yeah, Abe looks at that, and then he sees next to him, Abe, Dad's Dark Horse, and stuff like that, so. Which I probably should have looked into it before I started making this video, but I think it's kind of like sort of someone that wasn't expected to be successful or win, but someone that does, you know, end up becoming successful, I think, sort of thing. Abe's kind of sad when he sees that, and you know, so it's definitely not. It's pretty. You might be thinking, you know, that it's the movie's like an attack on women or something, but I don't really. It's definitely not. You know, only a very small percentage of women would sort of fuck some guy's brother when he's in a coma, but. There are all sorts of bad males out there, right? Some men out there, but I've seen interviews with the director. I think the writer is, his name's Todd Solondz, and talks about the movie. unfortunately, he doesn't really give a whole lot of detail about, his motivations for writing the movie and stuff like that, which has been unfortunate, but I really wish he would go on. But he basically said he's been watching a movie like a Judd Apatow movie, like 40-Year-Old Virgin and stuff like that. And this movie Dark Horse is supposed to be kind of like the opposite of that, basically what he said. He said the whole, living with your parents when you're 35 years old as a white guy, and it can be okay at first, but then it becomes kind of a pathology, But yeah, basically what I like about the movie is that I just believe it's so real and truthful, and it shows just how vicious humans can be, and which isn't always the case, but it's really. I think the main thing about it is that it shows that there is a consequence for complacency in life. You know what I mean? Okay. Like you take the look at if you watch the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, like he has a couple bad experiences with women. Trying to have sex and lose their virginity. When he's very young, or not whatever, like 18 years old or whatever. And that kind of throws him off, and he decides to go off women altogether for many years until he ends up 40 years old. And then at that point, a bunch of his friends, a bunch of really good, caring friends, come and help him along and help him have sex, and they end up finding him his dream girl, basically. And so everything works out nicely for him. And I think this movie, Dark Horse, kind of shows that, you better be careful, because that if you fuck away your time in life, things may not work out for you, and they can't really. So I don't want to somebody who's in that position, maybe whatever, 35 years old, 40 years old, talking about you can't turn your life around. I don't, it's not the only aspect of life that's, having a relationship with a woman and stuff like that. And you can have hobbies and have a fulfilling life and exercise and have a great career and have a great, great family life and whatever it is. And, but basically, this was a guy who didn't really value his time and didn't really have that fire under his ass to get moving and pursue relationships and stuff like that with women. And because of that, he ended up 35 years old, and then sort of like I think of it as like cramming, like when in university where you're not studying, every day like you should be, and at the very 2 days before the exam, you're like, oh god, what do I do? So you start cramming at the very end, and it doesn't work. Even a professor say it doesn't work. It doesn't. You have to be studying consistently. So this fellow he's just Abe in the movie. He's at a point that he's so desperate he'll put up with anything. He'll coerce a girl into giving him his number. He'll show up. He's so desperate he'll show up at a girl's house even though she doesn't want him there, and she ends up saying, "What are you doing here?" But in his mind, he's so desperate he rationalizes, and that's okay. Blah blah blah. He's in his mind, this girl wants him, and the girl will say she has a disease, and he'll risk his life trying to date her, which I'm not saying necessarily that guys shouldn't date or people just shouldn't date each other with a disease, but perhaps the girl should have found another guy who had the same disease as she had, sort of thing, and that way she wouldn't be able to infect him. And do you know what I mean? He puts up with that, and so that's kind of the thing, so there's a punishment that life gives you for complacency. movie that I really like is The Social Network. Kind of about the creation of Facebook, and it's, I think it's Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield. I think they starred in it, and Justin Timberlake. But it's an interesting movie, and I really like it. And I think it was directed by David Fincher, and I think Aaron Sorkin was the writer. And one of my favorite things about the movie is just the lighting. And I don't know. But it's like, kind of starts off the movie, and there's, it's a guy who, he's having this conversation, it's Mark Zuckerberg, right, who's the founder of Facebook, and he's going out to dinner with his girlfriend there, and Mark's in Harvard University, and his girlfriend's, I think, in Brown University, which I think is in Boston, I'm not sure, and yeah, but you basically find out that Mark's like, how do you distinguish yourself in a world like where in China, there's more people with genius IQs than there are people in the United States. So, and I'm not actually sure if that's true. And his girlfriend's like, is that really true? But basically, I think without saying directly, Mark was saying that he's a genius, and which I mean, from what I've read, I think he is. So you have this genius, right there. His motivation is trying to distinguish himself in the world, and he's young, but basically he says some things to his girlfriend which are really out of line. This guy, in the movie, is kind of like a bit of a jerk, or at least he was at the first. His girlfriend breaks up with him, and then he kind of runs home and back to his dorm room, and there's beautiful music in the movie too. It's just like this, instead of whoever was in charge of the music, instead of just using like music, from songs from actual bands and stuff like that are well known and have like lyrics and stuff like that. It's just most of the music doesn't have lyrics in this movie, and I think probably was created solely for the movie and stuff like that, and so it's I don't know, but it's just like he's walking back, and it's just like this. It's a bit of a sad music, but there's also like this underneath, also what you're hearing is like this ominous kind of music. It's like this. Basically, it wasn't just me who found this out. Basically, there's like this. The music kind of shows that there's this seething anger that Mark has, and this ambition that he has, and wanting to prove himself, and but then you find out once you start fact checking the movie and stuff like that, and this relationship that he had, this breakup with this girl and stuff like that didn't really happen, But still added to the movie a lot, but then Mark, that night he kind of gets drunk, and he creates this website, I think called it's Face Mash, and then he's comparing the physical attractiveness of like two college girls, side by side, and getting people to rate on them, which girl's hotter and stuff like that. And he does that by like hacking into these websites, like a Harvard database for the girls who live in the residence, and the Harvard and stuff like that, and also different universities, other universities as well. And, so the site gets a huge amount of hits, and then basically Mark gets caught, when the Harvard server crashes, and then Mark gets caught in front of them, get called in front of I think they call it the ad board or something. He gets in trouble and stuff like that, and he gets some probation in there. I think the Harvard newspaper there is called, I think, the Crimson. So Mark ends up in the Crimson, and basically the Winklevoss twins were also Harvard students. Hear about this, and they try to hire Mark. So they find him exiting one of his classes, and they're like, "You want to come work for us? We're working on this dating website for Harvard." And basically, the website is like an exclusive dating site, like for girls to find guys who only find guys who go to Harvard, which apparently a lot of girls were interested in. But I missed a big part. I mean, when Mark was, doing his hacking, he was creating that face mash thing. He brought in his friend Eduardo, Eduardo Savern, to give him this algorithm to use on that website when I was making that website and stuff like that. And Eduardo agrees, so he's got this friend named Eduardo right at Harvard. But they're like, those Winklevoss twins are like, can you help us make this website? And Mark's like, okay, cool, I'll do that. I'll be your computer programmer there, because the Winklevoss, they don't know much about computer programming, right? They're just like, it's basically just their business idea, and they would do the funding as well. I think their dad was wealthy. But then immediately after, basically, Mark goes and he approaches Eduardo, and he's like, I've got this great idea for this social networking site. And it's basically like a Facebook, but as it is now, but what it is only for Harvard at that time, but basically he needs money. Mark's problem is that he doesn't have any money, and this website is going to cost money, and that's where Eduardo comes in, because he made a bunch of money trading, doing some sort of stock trading or something like that, and he has money, and so Eduardo agrees, let's do this, and Eduardo's going to put in some money into this company, and Eduardo's going to be a part owner of the company. I think there may be 30%, and Mark's going to be a 70% owner or something like that. And so that's Mark starts building this website, right? Which I think was, I think it's still called Facebook, but it was called the Facebook at the time, and then the Winklevoss twins are emailing Mark and be like, how's the website going? And Mark's spelling well, I've been delayed, I've been busy with studying and blah blah blah, and this happened, and I'll text you back next week or whatever, and like that. And Winklevoss twins are starting to believe something has happened. But then eventually Mark finally completes the website and then launches it, and it's a big hit on campus right away. A lot of people join. And then the Winklevosses find out about that, and then they're just super pissed. And there's also this, it's not only Winklevoss, there's this guy called Divi Narendra, who's, because Winklevosses are twin brothers, and they're also on a rowing team, by the way, a Harvard rowing team for rowing boats. And there's Divi Narendra, and so they're pissed. They're like, Mark stole our idea, and he did that by stalling us. All this time he was saying that we thought he was working on our website, but he just couldn't because he was too busy. Meanwhile, he's making his own website, which is just a copy of our website. So he fucked us, and And also in the movie it shows them like they're with this lawsuit between the Winklevosses and Mark, because the Winklevosses eventually they decided to sue Mark. At first they didn't, but they're trying to sue Mark. And I heard I watched this YouTube video by this lawyer, and he said like when you're doing a deposition, because they had Mark do a deposition, basically like where a lawyer's like questioning him like, okay, what happened with this whole thing, like what's your side of the story, and questioning him and like, did you do this, did you do that, did you steal the idea for the Facebook and from the Winklevoss twins and stuff like that. But in the movie they have the Winklevoss twins and their lawyer, and then Mark and his lawyer all in the same room. Yeah, and I think even at that time they even had Eduardo Savern, who's, so I'm gonna give it away, but in the same room. So they had this huge deposition going on with all these parties, and the lawyer said, in real life it would just be Mark in a room with a lawyer and the deposition done that way, and then separately the Winklevoss in a room with the lawyer doing deposition that way. It wouldn't be all together, but in the movie it's done all together. But the dialogue in the movie is just so good. Wow. Basically, one thing that Eduardo says in the deposition, he says like Mark's idea for the Facebook it didn't really have anything to do with the Winklevoss' dating website, which I think is important. Like, you're kind of thinking that Mark just stole the idea from the Winklevoss twins, but I think, in my opinion, the idea that Winklevoss had, it was a dating website. And Facebook, as we know it, even as it was when Mark created it, it was not a dating website. It was just a social networking website. And so he didn't really steal the idea, but he did delay the Winklevoss twins by stalling them and saying he was too busy, this and that. But I don't, the funny thing is I don't think he needed to do that at all. Like, there was no point in him doing that almost like that. He should have said, like, he could have just said to him straight up, like, you know what? After he's like, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna create my own social networking website. And, there's not too much you can do about it. I'm a genius programmer. So he could have pursued that, saying, I'm out of here. I'm out of this business, this dating website with you. And then he goes off and creates the Facebook. I think he could have done that, Or even that, or just say, like, okay, to make a Western, I'm out. And, tell them what you're doing. Just say, I'm out. Instead of stalling them. And then he goes off and creates the social network, and he probably could have made it, I don't think the Winklevoss twins, they wouldn't have been like, well, Mark ejected himself from our plan. So obviously he's making his own social networking site for Harvard. But it's different because it's not a dating website. So let's make a social networking website, of our own to compete with Mark, and let's find another programmer. Like, I think that whole thing wouldn't have been happened. So Mark he wasn't being honest. He should have just said, like, I'm out, He could have just said, like, that I think the Winklevoss twins, like, the whole thing, giving Mark that proposition, like, sparked the idea that Mark had for the Facebook in Mark's mind, right? But he should have just been like, Mark's just like, okay, now I have this idea. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm gonna be out, but but all in all, if the Winklevosses, they should have still been able to create the dating website, I would say, for the Facebook. And I don't know if they really had grounds to sue Mark. They probably, I think they did end up suing Mark for a huge amount of money. And they probably benefited more, honestly, from doing that, accomplishing that, than if they would have found a different programmer to create their little dating website and stuff like that. I think, but I don't know. It's hard to say. But basically, the website's a big hit, Facebook, and now they meet Sean Parker, Sean Parker, some of you might be pretty young who's watching this, and Sean Parker was the founder of Napster, and Napster was big, huge when I was, growing up, and I don't know how old I was, maybe like 16, 15. I'm 36 now, but basically it was a pirating website, and for music, and it was a file sharing website, and basically you downloaded this program Napster for free, right? Anybody could, and you search up a song you want, and you download it, and for free, and you have it on your, and you have that song in your, so now it was a file sharing website now, so you now have that file on your computer, right, or on Napster, and automatically I think that file would get shared to anybody who's also using Napster who would search up that song. And so of course then eventually the bands like Metallica, and there were others, there's like, our music is being downloaded and shared for free, we're not getting any of this money from this, what the fuck is going on, like we're suing, and eventually Napster, they got sued and they got shut down, and it wasn't just Sean that was running Napster, it was this other guy, Sean, another guy named Sean, actually, is Sean Fanning, I believe, but basically shows him like, this was after Napster got shut down, and Sean Parker got word of, found out about the Facebook, and found out that Mark was basically the founder. So he's like, I want to pursue Mark here, and I want to get on this Facebook thing, and so he does. And Mark was like, oh my god, this guy, Sean Parker's, he's like some kind of god, and he's like, he was a programmer, and he created this awesome thing on Napster, and it was huge. I think Mark really admired Sean and stuff like that. I gotta go to work pretty soon. I think I'm probably have to finish. I was gonna talk about other movies and stuff, and probably just have to finish up the Social Network here and do the rest in another video. But I didn't think this video was it's already 39 minutes in. So, but basically, they have dinner together. Mark, it's Mark, Eduardo Savern, Sean Parker, and Eduardo's girlfriend at the time. They have a dinner together, and pretty much immediately Eduardo and Sean start bumping heads and arguing in bed, and but basically Eduardo, like, his whole motivation, he wants to get advertisements on the Facebook immediately to start generating revenue, right? That's his whole thing. He's a business guy. Mark doesn't want that, he's like, and then they ask Sean about it, and Sean kind of says like, well, neither of you are right now, but what Facebook has going for it is that it's cool, and you don't want to ruin it with ads because ads aren't cool. So that's, so that's kind of the thing. And then basically what happens is, Sean says, you gotta move out from Boston or whatever it is, it's like Cambridge or whatever it is, and gotta move from Harvard to I think Los Angeles or California, and because that's where I am, and that's where all the energy is happening, and this and that. And so Mark does, and Mark goes down there, and he hires some programmers, and goes down there to California, and they get a house, but Eduardo's paying for it though, the house, and but Eduardo's, he's busy, looking looking for advertisements, but advertisers for the website. But he's not really having much luck. And then Sean, one day there's a knock at the door, and it's raining heavily, and there's Mark and Sean. Eduardo's at the door, and he's knocking at the door, and then Sean's answers the door and lets him in, and then he's like, well, I've been waiting for Mark for hours at the airport. He's supposed to pick me up, and Sean's like, well, you went on a 36-hour coding tear or something like that, and so blah blah blah. So he took a nap. Then Eduardo kind of takes a jab at Sean because he thinks that there are a couple girls there who might be underage and stuff like that. So kind of takes a jab at them because of that. And then, but Sean Parker's more vicious than Eduardo, so it takes so he insults him, and so they're still going at it, these guys, and then Mark, he wakes up or whatever, and he starts talking to Eduardo, and then Eduardo's like, you talk to alone for a second, so they go talk alone, and then he's like, I don't want that guy Sean, running this company, or like as a part of this company, and stuff like that, and Mark's like, well, he set up a meeting with Peter Thiel, which is like this billionaire guy or something like that, and Thiel might want to make an angel investment and stuff like that, and he's like, basically it gets out, then Eduardo's like, I've been riding subways 14 hours a day, trying to find advertisements, and then Mark's like, well, how's that going for you? And he kind of has a point, like, so it's not going well, and Mark's like, one of the things Mark said, like, you need to move out of here because I'm worried you're going to get left behind. And Eduardo's like, what do you mean get left behind? And stuff like that. And, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but then that's the end of that. And soon after, Eduardo goes and, he frees the account. And the bank account that Facebook is using to fund itself. And then Mark finds out about that, and of course super pissed, and calls Eduardo and just reams him out and stuff like that. And basically says, like, what the difference between our company and other social platforms and stuff like that, so we don't crash ever. It creates a domino effect. One user goes, and then they're connected with other users, and so the other users go, and don't you get that, and stuff like that. And he's like, and this was, so I'm not explaining. This is after, so Thiel didn't make the angel investment of, I think, $500,000, and things are moving along quickly, and they got their own office, and a big office and stuff like that, and they're getting tons of use, and they expanded well beyond Harvard. And but Mark's like, I need you to come down here, Eduardo, to sign some papers or something like that, and so he's arguing with him at first. He's reaming him up, and then he's like, well, I need my CFO in California. And so Eduardo's like, okay, I'll get down there. And basically, what happened was, Eduardo ended up going down there and signing some papers from some lawyers on Facebook, but he wasn't paying attention to what he was signing. And really, what he was signing is that for his, I think, ownership of the company to be taken down to, or maybe the profit he makes from the company taken down to 0.03% from 30%, and so to make much less money. So that's kind of, so it's Mark and Sean bugging him, and yeah, so but then Eduardo goes back to New York or whatever it was, or Boston, and later on he comes back, and sure enough, they got more papers to sign, the lawyers for him, or for Eduardo. Then Eduardo starts reading a little more carefully this time, and he's like, what is this? And because I think that the 0.03% thing wasn't finalized yet, and this would kind of finalize it. And he kind of storms out there almost crying and is extremely angry, and basically Mark's working on his laptop, and he grabs Mark's laptop and picks it up and just slams it down, breaks it, and it's like, you know, like, you know, you fucked me there, and, you know, how much were, about the stock ownership was Sean's, you know, ownership diluted down to, and he's like, and how much was yours? And basically Mark doesn't respond because they didn't reduce Mark's or Sean's ownership down. They reduced Eduardo's and stuff like that. So that's why Eduardo was also suing Mark, you know, and yeah, it was a great scene though. And he's like, says to him, like, you better lawyer. Said Eduardo says to Mark, you know, be your lawyer up, asshole, because I'm not coming back for 30%. Like, I'm coming back for everything. But yeah, I mean, it's I didn't listen to Aaron Sorkin's, you know, talking about the movie and stuff like that, and basically he says, you know, it's possible that years down the road that people will say this video is now irrelevant because maybe you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Facebook could become irrelevant. I don't see it happening, but or something like that. But it's really it's more than a movie about that, about the creation of Facebook. It's really a movie about betrayal and about two friends that were together, and Eduardo being this, you know, at the beginning of the movie, he says like when Mark brought him in to give him the algorithm for that face match thing, he's like, Eduardo's like, I'm here for you, and you get over the movie, you see like Eduardo's basically, he's a good guy, and he's a good friend to Mark, but Mark kind of has a point in a way, like his whole strategy of finding the advertisements like prematurely, eventually, and as you know now, Facebook is filled with ads, but that's how they make their money, and so they're making just billions off of this. But at the time, it would have really made the website worse, putting all those advertisements on there, when it was just to get traction. You know, you just wanted Facebook to be a cool thing, and you know, but you had this evil character or in the movie, but which was Sean, you know, trying to corrupt Mark and get him to push Eduardo out of the company and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't think you really, I could be wrong, you know, let me know in the comments, but you don't have a whole lot of movies like that where it's about betrayal between two friends. Like, you kind of see that maybe it's like some movie about medieval times or something like that, some king betrays another king or something like that, but about contemporary movie, like two friends, and one of them betrays the other and something. It's an interesting movie. And kind of at the end of the movie, Mark's kind of trying to add his ex-girlfriend there that talked about at the beginning of the movie, trying to add her on Facebook and stuff like that. And I didn't really understand that too well. I think it's just, maybe he's just trying to like, he's kind of, yeah, I didn't really, something he wants human connection again. Some people have different theories. I didn't really understand that part that well, but I think, yeah, gotta go to work, ready to get ready, so, but thanks for watching. Okay, bye.